Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Omega Insight. Happy Thanksgiving week as we're approaching the holiday. Typically, I talk about gratitude when we get to the Thanksgiving, but this time I wanted to share something a little bit different. I wanted to talk about resistance and changing the perspective that we have. Resistance can be a fuel to help us achieve. Most of us don't see that. Resistance, most of the time, is what prevents us from moving on. We get resistance from our family and friends when, let's say, I want to change a job, or I don't want to be in a relationship that I'm in, or I want to move to a different house. There's always those around us. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. And most of the time, we get that because they love us and they don't want us to suffer. So fear comes into play. They're afraid for us. Whether it's, oh my gosh, you're going to fail, or I don't have the money to support you if something doesn't happen. Like that fear kicks in, and sometimes it's because they put it on themselves. I would never do that, and they want to prevent us from moving forward. That's one kind of resistance. But I want to back up for a second and talk to you a little bit about weight training. Those of you who do work out, you know there is a form of weight training that's called resistance training. They actually have, it's called resistance bands. That's the resistance bands. We pick them up. They're like the big elastic bands that you use. And the thing that's nice about the resistance bands is they can target specific muscles. A lot of athletes like to use resistance bands because you target specific areas. For those of you who don't know that, it's the big band, and then you pull, and you could do the a bicep curl, or you can push out for an extension, or you could do the extensions this way, so tricep extensions this way. You can do a cross or this way. Like by pulling that, you're training your muscle because you've got the resistance against you, and that helps develop your muscles. Swimming is actually a wonderful exercise because you've got the water as a resistance. It's not too much, but it's enough to pull and work your muscles to help develop your muscles, help conditioning your muscles. When you're conditioning your muscles, you are actually exercising and losing weight. So, as I said, I actually could just do this and leave my arm out, and after a while, gravity is actually going to be the resistance. So resistance is all about us. Anytime we do something different, we will experience resistance. Now, of course, those of you who do work out, you know that eventually, as you're working out, you need to increase the resistance. You're going to develop the strength enough, and if you don't increase the resistance, you're not developing anymore, and you're not conditioning anymore. So, with all of that said, let's take a moment and go back to the idea of an application. So if I'm using this concept that resistance can be used for achievement, let's look at humanity. When I think about humanity, no man, no institution, no empire has ever been great or reached greatness without great resistance. Greatness can't be achieved without this process. And unfortunately, the average person misunderstands this. Mr. and Mr. Average, in their ignorance, are fearful of resistance. Even the slightest amount of resistance, they're fearful of it because they like things the way they are. They don't want to make waves. They don't want to be criticized. They incorrectly feel that such things will prevent them from being happy, when actually the opposite is true. When it comes to resistance, anytime that we achieve greatness, it's because we had to go through the resistance. Like, think about history, for example. Christopher Columbus had great resistance when he proposed to the Queen of Spain, hey, I want to go across the ocean because I believe then we can get to, I think he was trying to get to China, the trade routes. My history is not that good. I'm sure somebody will let me know I'm said it wrong, but so I want to cross, and everyone said, no, the ocean is flat. The world is flat. You're going to fall off the edge of the ocean. It's not going to happen. So he received a great deal of resistance. However, by using that resistance, he was able to use the energy and go ahead and cross the country, obviously, the ocean, and come to the United States, and Thanksgiving is based upon one of those factors. George Washington, the same amount of resistance. We want to break away from England. There were people, you have to recognize, there were people in the colonies who didn't want to. They wanted to stay with England. I mean, that of course. Benedict Arnold, I think, was a great example of that. Abraham Lincoln had great resistance during the Civil War. He is pushing the 13th Amendment to free the slaves. Great amount of resistance. The country was falling apart, and he still achieved it. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, all of them had great resistance because they were changing. They were changing something in our society. They were changing something in the society they existed in, and they encountered a great deal of resistance from the people, whether they were agree or disagree, but they still engaged in a great amount of resistance. Now, here's the thing I want to mention. When it comes to resistance, it's so important to remember. I think I've used this illustration before. When I'm going to have change, and I know there's going to be resistance, then I prepare myself for it. It's like an aircraft. The airplane, the wing of an aircraft is designed tipped up just a little bit because it is going to fly into the wind. For those of you who understand flight, aircrafts fly into the wind. Why? They use the resistance of the wind for lift. So here's an aircraft. Its wings are tilted. The wind is coming at it, and when the two of them combine, boom, we have lift. That's what happens. The plane lifts because of the resistance. It was planned for. Therefore, when it comes to any kind of achievement that I want to do, it is necessary to prepare and plan for the things that we desire. For example, you want to quit your job, you're not happy? Well, you know what? You have a family that this is also going to affect, so we have to be careful about that. So therefore, what do? Well, before I quit, here's what I'm going to do. I've got these contacts, these are the people, or perhaps we have a job already lined up. But if you don't, here's the plan of what I'm going to do. Make sure you have enough financial backing behind you in case it doesn't work out, that you've still got enough financial comfort, a cushion to exist until you do find your next job or the job that you love. If you want to start your own business, same thing. Everybody, anyone who's ever started your own business, it's absolutely imperative to have a business plan and to have finances to help support you while you're getting started. Everyone understands that who's ever had a business. Well, you don't even have to have a business to understand that. When it comes to resistance, and we understand the resistance, it's important that we prepare for it. If we don't prepare for the resistance will crush our dreams. If I'm not prepared until, like a teenager who doesn't want to go to school to be a lawyer like their parent, but they'd rather be a singer, and if they're not prepared for it, the lawyer's going to they're going to lawyer their child out of wanting to be a singer. You can do it out on the side. You need to be secure, and they can give all appropriate points. And they're not doing that because they don't love them. They're doing it because they do love them, and they think they know what's better. Therefore, if we know we're going to encounter resistance, we must be prepared for it. I wanted to end tonight talking from George, from his little piece he had, The Power of Achievement is what he came about. So I just want to directly quote him on this. He says, "At each step of the way, there are hurdles to jump and obstacles to overcome. At each point, a new refining is required. A cleansing of some kind is necessary every time. Without this purifying, the advancement is illusionary. It only goes sideways. It is the great pretense of growth. You cannot circumvent movement. The great resistance must be overcome." That's what George's words are. The great resistance must be overcome. So what does he mean by this? He means that if I don't change as I'm progressing, I'm not going to achieve. The whole point of me saying, hey, this is what I want to do, is because I know I'm not happy with what I am, and I must be able to go through that resistance and use it to my advantage. Because resistance, if it comes down to it, it's energy. It helps define us. Going back to the idea of resistance bands, those bands are defining my muscles. They're helping to contour and develop my muscles. Therefore, applying that to life, resistance is helping define me. Therefore, I should not be frightened by resistance. It would be appropriate to embrace it because it's defining who we are. Thank you for joining me this evening. I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving week and enjoy your time with family and friends and whatever kind of resistance that shows up for you then. I look forward to seeing you next Monday. Bye now.